Hey guys, Robert here, and I have with me a very special guest. Took a while to get him on board, but Mr. Tom King, comic writer extraordinaire.
What an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for spreading the word about my favorite medium, comics. Thank you for talking about it. Just thank you. Thank you to the audience for listening. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you so much. So, first things first, I want to get the easiest, obvious question out of the way. Which is it, street or boat? With Batman Catwoman. Why to get the funny one out of the way?
I guess it depends on who you ask. I guess if you're asking Bill Finger or Frank Miller, they're the deciding votes. I'll see what I can do. I know I know Finger's granddaughter. She's wonderful, and I know Frank, so I'll text him. We'll see what we can figure out. Get them to fight each other.
I love that joke. I just love that. And I think you've said before it came from an interaction with you and your wife and everything, how you guys seem to argue about where you first met or something like that.
Very much so. My wife and I have a disagreement. We've been married now almost 20 years. We've been together almost 25. We met when we were very young children, of course. And we cannot agree on our first date. She thinks we went out for Ethiopian. I think we went out for Tex-Mex, and it is an ongoing argument that has yet to have been decided. But I'm 100% sure I'm right. So someday I think we'll just have an epiphany and realize. But yeah, so I stole this ongoing argument I've had, and turned into this thing between Batman and Catwoman where they cannot decide. Between the two continuities that have been offered up in either Batman Year One or the Batman.
By the way, we're barely seeing your face. By the way, we keep seeing your hat.
Yeah, there's my beautiful face.
So okay. First things first.
When I'm answering questions, I always look down. I don't know why. It's like
it's understandable. But okay. First, here's a general question I want to ask right off the bat. Which is it easier when you're working? Because you've worked in Black Label and all that in mainline. Which has been easier for you, working in continuity or out of continuity?
I mean, I don't know. It depends on what's ahead of me. I mean, I definitely prefer to have as much creative freedom as possible. I don't particularly love when I'm the thing I dislike most about in continuity comics. And this was very plaguing with my early years, which was a decade ago. But like when Tim and I were doing Grayson, we would write, we'd make a plan, and then we'd sort of find out, no, the villain you use needs to be used in the Justice League to get a new villain, or
that old stuff.
And so we change our plans, and it's hard there to get sort of the consistency you need. So in that way, but when you're writing a Black Label, there are other expectations, and you lose. Continuity gives you certain things. It gives you importance to your story. It raises the stakes for all your stories. So suddenly you have to kind of make up for that. So that's sort of another challenge. So I mean, it's a stupid answer, but it depends. Neither one is easier or harder, I guess.
I gotcha. Now, your Wonder Woman book, you've been writing it for well over a year. How would you say it has been writing? Because I know some writers, like you get on a character, takes a while. Did you think you knew it right away, or do you feel now you've kind of got your groove with writing Diana?
No, I struggle in a good way. I think I've said this before, but if you're not writing with doubt, you're not writing well. So I'm never at the point where I'm like, I've got this. This is easy. I can put it on cruise control. And Diana's a very complicated character. She's more complicated, and is more of a challenge than Batman or Superman. Just for a various reason, her continuity is more fluid and discombobulated than there are. Her origin story is more complex than there is. What makes her special is harder to put your finger on, and all those factors make her a challenge every time I sit down. And so every time I sit down, I mean, that's why I kind of love the book. I love that you can't rest on your laurels in this book. Every issue has to be something super special and unique. Every issue you feel like you're climbing a mountain, you're going to work up a sweat and be tired at the end. So I very much love working on it, but it's definitely hard. It's definitely a challenge.
Yep, I bet it is. Now, you're one of the few writers to actually work on now all three of the characters. You've done Superman, you've done Batman, you've done Wonder Woman. How does that feel to be one of the few who can actually say you've had at least some work? Maybe not, you haven't had a whole Superman run, but you still handled the character very well. How does that feel to be in that rare echelon?
Oh, how rare is it? I feel like there must be like 50 or 60 other writers with me. I don't know what comes to mind. You know, I guess Jim Starlin comes to mind.
Well, I mean,
Denny
what I meant by
O'Neil
having
comes
solo
to mind.
writings, I mean having solo writing of all three of them at once.
Well, that's true, but I've never written the actual Superman comics, so I feel like I've never written. I've written on those one action issue. I wrote
That's
one
true.
story in one Action 1000. So
I count Up in the Sky though. I count that as
I've got a good Superman mini in me, but I have not done an actual Superman run. So you'll have to ask me that question after I finish Wonder Woman, if they let me do a Superman run.
that's fair.
That's the ultimate goal, is to get 100 Batmans, 100 Wonder Womans, and 100 Supermans. And,
That's true.
And so that's way when they do my grave at the end of my life, they could be like, "Here lies Tom King. What a fucking nerd."
Now, speaking of your Batman run, now originally it was meant to go to 100, but then got a little short. And Batman Catwoman, was that what we got, what you had in mind, or did that get reworked when it became its own separate thing?
It got reworked when it became a separate thing. The original plan, some of this is getting foggy in my memory, so forgive me if I get some of it wrong.
All right, it's all right.
The original plan was always they were going to get married at issue 100, and the idea is we would wrap the I Am Bane, or the City of Bane story at 85, and then we were just going to do 15 issues of like the best artists who had been on the series, kind of like a valedictory, coming back and doing these sort of 2 issue stories, which are just general Gotham stories of the two of them. And what happened was for the 5G plan, which of course was scrapped later, they wanted to replace Batman with Bruce Wayne with another character.
Jace Fox, I believe.
Yes. And I was told that the Bat book had to support that, and so the last 15 issues could not be about the wedding, but had to be sort of about that transition. And they offered, I had the choice if I could stay on and do that, or I could take those last 15 issues and do them in a special, which was Batman Catwoman. And I opted for that because we had dropped in sales a little bit, but with City of Bane, thanks to Tony Daniel, who was drawing the crap out of it, our sales had gone back up, so I could choose to stay on the book or not. And I chose to do the Batman Catwoman. It was my favorite artist at the time, Clay Mann. And so we sort of went off to do that and do the wedding in continuity. And then a lot of different things happened behind the scenes, with 5G being canceled, and our editor-in-chief moved on. And Clay himself went through some personal stuff where Batman Catwoman got delayed for about 2 years. And so the combination of all those factors ended up Batman Catwoman being sort of a future story instead of an in-continuity present story. But they do still get married at the end. Yes.
That's true.
And if you read, no one ever remembers, but if you read 85, they all but get married. They just don't have the piece of paper. They say the words, they just don't have the piece of paper.
That's true.
Which was the best I could do given the limitations.
Yep.
Of editorial. So yeah, that's my memory of what happened.
I understand. Now, the one DC book, a non-DC book I'm going to bring up was your Archie the Decision, which...
I love it so much.
Yep. How is it, first of all, how was it working on it? And second of all, if you could decide Betty or Veronica, who would it be? 'Cause I know everyone's different.
It was a joy to work on. I did it for my children. My children are huge Archie fans. They have stacks and stacks of Archie comics all throughout my house. And if you read the book, you'll find that the legend Dan Parent, who's one of the greatest Archie artists of all time, drew my children in the book, and he sent me the piece of original art, which arrived yesterday. And it's my favorite thing ever. It was I loved it. It was like having a week off of work. Writing silly Archie jokes, and if you read the whole thing's a love letter. I try to get everybody I could.
Is that them?
That's them.
That's what I thought.
Those are my 3 kids.
I was wondering, wait, who are those?
Who are those random people? Those are my children. So I mean, I did as many jokes as I could, and it's very much written in old. I'm a big fan. When I started reading what my kids were reading, I found what I loved about it, which was the 60s, 50s gag Archies, or the Dan DiCarlo, Harry Lucy Frank Doyle stuff, which I sort of fell in love with. And so it's kind of a love letter to that era. It's written in the same style. It's also, the first 5 pages is an Archie story, second is a Betty and Veronica story, and then you have a little bit.
Yep.
So yeah, I couldn't have been happier working on it. I love that property. I love that world. I love those people. Archie is just super fun. I can't wait to do it again.
Yep.
As for who I would choose, Betty or Veronica, my heart is with Veronica, I guess, but I married a Betty, so I don't know.
For me, it's Veronica as well.
Yeah. But for old school Archie fans, it didn't used to be Betty or Veronica. In the beginning, Archie chose Veronica, and the sort of plot was Betty kind of stealing Veronica away. It was a different kind of triangle. It became this choice later on.
That's true. That is true.
In my mind, I always have Archie and Veronica sort of set. So maybe
yeah. Hey, again, for me, I always find that just so interesting because of the case where Betty's the safe bet. Veronica's the person who he helped change her more so. Like, she needs Archie. Otherwise, she'll be stuck with Reggie. That's how I always looked at it. So now,
Reggie can be evil. Reggie can be okay. He's got there's honor to his evil.
Just like with Cheryl, for example, Cheryl Blossom, for example, she could be evil. Yep. Exactly. But now I've noticed with your Jenny Sparks book recently, you're one of the first people to handle her as she originally was introduced in a while. Usually you've had revamps of her, or it's Jenny Quantum or Jenny whatever. You were the first one to actually handle her since. I'm not saying since her death per se, but in a big mainline book you are. So what is your opinion on what makes her such an interesting character?
There's 1,000 things that make her interesting. What made her interesting to me and what made me want to sort of do this book was the idea that she's the spirit of the 20th century, born on the first day of the century and obviously died in the last.
Yep.
And as we've kind of tumbled through the 21st century, I'm old enough to remember, I'm a child of the 20th century. I'm old enough to remember the end of it and how it felt like the 20th century, which was a horrible, horrible century, maybe the worst in human history. Probably. Just in terms of World War I being followed by the plague, being followed by World War II, being followed by the Cold War, and just the millions upon millions of people who needlessly died due to human cruelty.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
At the end of the 20th century, it felt like we were emerging from that the world wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. And I do remember this sense of sort of optimism, and the idea that the arc of justice, bends the right way and all that stuff. And then 9/11 happened, and then the 20th, and then we had the Iraq War, and we had I could sort of go through these events each, and I think we thought the 20th century was dead, but sort of those ghosts of those crimes are haunting us now.
True.
And it seems to sort of be living in our lives, and the sort of the bright, optimistic future that we once held has been sort of torn away. And I like the idea that Jenny Sparks thought the 20th century was dead. She thought the world was heading in a good place. That's why she was willing to die. But when it turns out the 20th century wasn't quite dead with us yet, that there was some necessity for her to still be alive. So that's what the book about. It's about this new century and how we try to live in it and how we try our best to live in it. Yeah.
Right. Now, here's an interesting question. Do you have a crisis level type of event in you, or is that not in your wheelhouse?
No, I don't have one in me. No.
You don't?
I don't have I don't have the wherewithal to write. I hate the two things I hate about writing is telling someone else what to write and being told what to write.
Right.
I hate both of those things. And if you are a event writer, you have to tell a bunch of people, write this, this is the way it has to be. And you have to kind of organize all of it. I that's just not for me. It's not sort of my thing. I want to do. Even if you look, I wrote an event called Heroes in Crisis, which is I love, but is universally hated. Not universally. People have lots of problems with it, but I love it. But we didn't do crossovers. We did a few here and there because I could not tell people write this way, write that way.
Right.
It's not sort of the way I operate.
Okay.
And so I don't have that kind of thing in me. No, I mean, I feel like I don't even think I could do, what Hickman did with Secret War when he kind of took all the characters and wrote his own. But that had 1,000 crossovers. I don't
Right, that did. That's true.
Where you map something out. It's not in my nature to organize other people.
All right,
Even
that's
when I was in the
understandable.
CIA, I hated being a manager. That's
Right, that's understandable. Yep, I completely understand. Now here's now how about this? What is easier to write? Straight on superheroics, superheroics, or more straight, grounded, like the introspective type of stories?
I mean, it depends on your mood. Superhero stories. I mean, easier is a weird way to think about things.
Well, I'm not a comic writer, that's why I'm asking.
No, I don't know what easy. The things that are like Human Target was incredibly easy to write,
right?
But it was a heroic, and then
okay, maybe I phrased it wrong. Maybe I phrased it wrong.
It's a hard. Anything's easy if you're inspired. It gets easy when it gets fun. It's only hard when you're like, I have no idea what to put on the next page. That's when it's hard. But so when you're super inspired, I mean, there are challenges to each. When you're doing a comic without superpowers, you have to find a way to make a comic dynamic, because you don't have. When I'm doing superheroes and I want to do something dynamic, I can just have them punching each other.
True.
If I'm doing, a quiet comic about a bunch of friends, how many shots can you be where they're,
that's true,
in the bathroom on the bed? But when I first broke into comics, I worked for a guy, Tom Fowler was an artist I worked with, a brilliant artist and painter. And he had this rule which haunts me, called the coffee rule. And his idea was you can't have two people have a conversation for more than 2 panels without one of them getting up and getting coffee, because he just didn't want to draw like heads over and over again. And so
get you.
When you're doing non-superheroes, you're constantly finding ways for them to get coffee, just to give them something to draw. Which is
I understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. Now your Penguin series, loved it. I loved your Penguin series.
I appreciate that.
Yep. Now, first of all, was that like everything that was set up? Was you in mind, or were you told about what was set up and you worked off from it?
Tell me what you mean by set.
Okay, like him being killed and then believed to be dead and all that. Like
yes,
everything
some of that, yeah. In Chip's comics, that's an in-continuity comic, so I was working off of the continuity established in the main Batman title, and in that his 2 children had murdered him, quote unquote, and he had sort of slipped away and gone to Metropolis, gotten a surgery on his nose reduced,
right,
and had been So the starting point was all Chip Zdarsky. He put that on the table, and I went from there.
I was curious because sometimes if there's a mini coming, sometimes they work to set it up. So it was the other way around.
Yes. It was set up by the main book, by the main Batman book, for sure.
All right.
In fact, if you read the first trade, there's some Chip comics in the back of the setups that are included.
Gotcha. And what makes him stand out from the rest of the rogues, in your opinion? Because you really made him a complicated character. I mean, more so.
I think the idea of he plays to be underestimated. I think all the rogues are loud. Joker wants to be Joker. Clayface wants to be. They are, at least on the surface, what they seem to be. And Penguin purposely is not that. He wants you to think he's a wimpy guy with a fat belly and an umbrella, and that he's nothing, and you dismiss him. And in that dismissal, he's defeating you. They played on this in the television show very well with the exact same thing. That just everyone thinks this guy, you can shit on him and he'll have no consequences. But in fact, he's measuring every single person he comes in contact with, and he's willing to cross barriers no one else is willing to cross to get to where he wants to go. The television show and I were on this exact same page in that. I think that's what makes the Penguin different from all the Batman villains. You don't see him coming.
You really don't. And I especially love the addition. Now he knew. He knows who Bruce is.
Yes, yeah. We added that at the end. I mean, I've obviously I mean, is it so hard to figure out Bruce Wayne is Batman? He's the richest guy in the city. They're never in the same place at the same time.
True.
He just happens to be, incredible. Yeah. But yes, yeah. I added that he gets that, and again, that's Bruce underestimating him. Bruce not understanding who he is.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I did like that. I mean, it just made him more and more formidable as we went on. I wanted to make him a worthy opponent. I think by the end, you're like, holy crap, this guy is he's a manipulative, crazy asshole who kills his own children and gets Batman to do what he wants by losing. He loses to Batman and therefore wins.
That's true. Now, recently in your Wonder Woman, it was finally revealed the birth of Trinity and everything. Now, at the start of the series, it was at least implied, or if I was reading too much into it, that Trinity was actually going to be the daughter of that one Amazon. It started everything. But then it's been revealed, no, that's not the case. Was that intentional? Was that meant to be a red herring? Or I'm curious on that. Or did I read too much into the early stuff and it was always meant to be this?
It was always meant to be this. Steve was always meant to be the father. The idea of the clay birth did evolve more. But there were some red herrings there, and those red herrings are going to pay. Like I said, this is a 100-issue run, so we're planting. Having done this with Batman, I know how to do it. We're planting seeds that are going to pay off 50 issues later. So yeah, all that stuff was planned out, and we floated some things to make you look left when we're coming to the right.
Okay,
that's just clever storytelling.
Oh yeah, it was very clever. You definitely caught me off guard because I was just up until that issue. I just kept thinking, when are we going to see that Amazon again? What about her baby?
Because there are two people we have not seen that have been quiet. Yeah, one of them is the Amazon, and one of them is not someone else. And that's a hint. That's a clue that people are picking up on, because what you're seeing is Sovereign is telling the story, so he only knows what he knows. So there is stuff going on that Sovereign doesn't know about. So once we leave Sovereign's perspective. We haven't left his perspective yet? That's interesting. No, we have not left his perspective yet, which I guess we left it for the crossover issues. Oh yeah. But when Sovereign, the end of the Sovereign saga, whatever you want to call it, ends with issue 19, I believe. And so when we leave that perspective, then we'll find out about the story he couldn't tell. Okay, that you got me interested. You have got me very interested. Awesome. Success. I'm happy about that. Definitely. Now, when you're given a book, like Adam Strange or Human Target, what do you do to prepare for each title? Do you look over all their books and figure out what to use? How much of it is like from what's established and how much of it is, I'm going to put my own spin? I mean, the first thing I do is I go back to the original origin story. I read what made that character special off the bat. Human Target's a perfect example. I went and read the Len Wein, Dick Giordano stories that were the backup in Action Comics or Adventure. I don't know. I forget which either. To be fair. Hey, I'm good. I'm good with comic knowledge, but I'm not. But I'm only human. They're excellent comics, and then I start doing my research. I start reading the runs people love. I start reading the books. I have 1,000. You can see my room is just full of trades. Yep. I have all the reference you would need in my office. Same with me too. You can see all the books I have. And I call on. I am fortunate enough that in my youth I read so many comics, and I still do, but not as many because I have 3 children and a wife. But thanks to those many years of reading many comics, I have a deep knowledge of sort of what clicks and what doesn't. And so that's at the beginning of everything. And then I start to spin and be like, okay, I know all that. And what's awesome in that? And how can I spin that into something modern and relevant and cool? So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I was just doing that today with a new character, trying to, I usually put on some headphones, I listen to some music, and I walk my dog, and I think, and I'm like, it doesn't work. That's shitty. No, that's not where it should go. Oh, wait, that's okay. And I steal a lot from old movies, like obviously Human Target a lot is the plot is stolen from an old movie called DOA. So I do that. DOA is in the public domain. There's nobody to sue me. So So yes, I do that. And once I do that, I was like, okay, I have the essentials, I have kind of a take, and then I can get started. It starts to work. You don't know it's working until you start to see the first few pages in your head. Where you start to see, oh, okay, okay. And then I could see him I could see Human Target pouring the alcohol. I could see him taking the sip. I could see him lying down and dying. And then I was like, that's a cool way to start the Human Target. And then I was like, all right, well, then I have a book. Okay, if I can start it, I have a book.
Cool. Okay, I have one lantern question to ask you. What is willpower to you?
Yeah, this comes from a panel I wrote. From Heroes in Crisis, where Hal says he cannot define what the word will is. That goes back. I'm a philosophy major, and I was especially obsessed with medieval religious philosophy. And I read a ton of tracts by people like Anselm and St. Thomas, arguing over what will is and how to define it. This was a huge deal, of course, to the Christian church, because will is what sort of God was judging you on. And you had to decide if they were sort of fighting against the Calvinists who said, like, there's no human will, it's all God's will, and all that stuff. And so these great philosophers for hundreds and hundreds of years argued over what will is, because will is not something. It's not like a table or a computer,
right?
Or a me. You can't touch it. You can't taste it.
No.
You
feel it.
You feel it. But does it actually exist? I mean, do we have any free will, or are we all just either pawns of a great God, if you believe that, or pawns of atoms smashing together, if you believe that? And who gives us this will? Where does it come from? There's so many questions on what will is. And I wanted to show that in his worst moments, Hal has doubts. And so that's what that panel is about.
Okay. That explains a lot. Now, I would say, speaking of those stuff in Heroes in Crisis, Black Canary was my favorite. Just the, fuck this, and walks right out, and then it's nothing but empty seats. That is so tied up.
Perfect for her, yes.
Which leads into you have this book coming out, which is her versus Lady Shiva. And from what I've read, you're going to involve so many characters, and especially her mother. Her mother has not been brought up in I don't know how long.
Well, it's not 100% clear in continuity where exactly this, the mother, because at some point, obviously, post-crisis, they decided to divide Dinah into two different characters.
Yeah, there was a point where her mother's mind was put into her body, and she lived on through her to give her the sonic cry. That still weirds me out. What the heck were they thinking of that?
Yeah, that's why I love comics, man. It's vaudeville. You throw everything you can at the stage to see what sticks.
Oh yeah.
But yes, I have a brand new book coming out next week called Black Canary, with Ryan Sook on art, with utterly beautiful art.
Sook is amazing.
Art. And I love this book. To me, it's another Supergirl. It's another Human Target, if those are the kind of books you dig. And it's about the number one hand-to-hand fighter in the DC universe, Lady Shiva, versus the number two hand-to-hand fighter in the DC universe, Black Canary.
Yeah.
And they do like a Vegas-style Tyson match where they are deciding who the best fighter in the DC universe is.
Sorry, you mentioned Tyson given recent events.
Yes, exactly. And there's 6 issues, 6 rounds, and these women drive themselves utterly to the limits. And while you're watching this match to determine who wins, who's the best of the best, obviously, you see flashbacks to how Canary got to this match. Because it's a very weird thing for a superhero to agree to do a public match in Vegas for money. Yep. And that's a mystery. So you get to why she agreed to this match and how this match deals with what is the center of this thing, which is her relationship with her mother, and dealing with the greatest sort of theme in DC for DC Comics, which is legacy. The one thing I think we have a little bit over Marvel.
Yes.
The idea that our books are about what parents give to their children and what children and what children take from their parents. And so obviously people, Dinah Drake is the golden age Black Canary, and she raised a daughter who became a superhero. So it's about, that's the center of the whole thing. It's a relationship between a mother and a daughter, and that part of it is going to break your heart, while the fight will get you up screaming.
Yeah, I cannot wait. That definitely sounds awesome. And you've definitely been very good when it comes to this. You tell a present story, you tell flashbacks. That's definitely been one of the best stuff I've loved about your work is this filling gaps through flashbacks. Really enjoy that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the pleasures of comics is that you can flip around time. I mean, comics, obviously it's a time medium. That's why you have the sort of the panels controlling, one thing after another, so that you can mess with that and go back and forth, but still have the voiceover. It's one of the best things you can do with comics is you can skip around in time in a way that you can do in film, but it's much harder, much more disorienting. In comics, because we do it page by page, the flow is much better.
Right. Now, with Trinity, with the backups, you've had the chance of having pretty much the son and daughter Trinity of it on their own, with Davian and John helping take care of her babysitter. I've been loving those backups. I've been loving them, and it's so nice to see the Super Sons. It always feels like because John is still a bit of an age gap, you don't see it that often. And how does it feel to be handling the Super Sons?
Oh, it's a joy. Writing those backups is the most fun. It's another thing I do for my kids. It's the only, besides Archie, the comic I write, that my kids actually get excited about. They want to talk at the table. They're like, what's Trinity do? And then what's John do? And then what's Damien do? And they read all that, and it makes them laugh. And it's drawn beautifully by Belen Ortega, who draws in this like half manga, half Western comic style, where she's in both worlds at the same time in a way I don't even understand how she does it. I've written so many comics that are sad boys looking out the window crying, or like Hal Jordan, I don't know what Will is. This kind of, and so it's just nice to write something that is just full of joy and silliness and dumbass jokes, and it's a tribute to I'm very passionate, oddly, about comic strips. I love comic strips. I love Calvin and Hobbes. I love I love
Calvin and Hobbes.
And so it's a tribute to all of those, and that these are gag comics. They're things that where there's a joke at the end, and I enjoy them. But there's also there's a little bit of heart in the whole thing. There's the idea that these boys are helping to raise this girl, and that they're all kind of they're forming a family together. It's very adorable.
Yep, like I said, it's the Trinity Juniors.
It is. It's the Trinity Juniors, or it's the super babysitters.
Yeah,
and they have such. I love because they have such interesting chemistry between the two of them. Because John and Damien are always arguing, and she's causing a little trouble, which gets them to fall off. And I don't know. It's my favorite.
I love that. I especially love when Damien was talking about how he stopped Final Crisis. It's like, dude, you weren't even there. You were off the board in Mars's hands at that point.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Which, of course,
I love making Final Crisis jokes. It's fun because Final Crisis ends with Superman singing, which is just the funniest thing ever. So I constantly make jabs at that. I just think it's a fantastic series that because I love it, I can mock it a little bit.
Yep. And you have, speaking of which, you have that Trinity's they now said it's a mini series. Was it always meant to be a mini? Was it going to be an ongoing and all that? Because I don't think they specified at the start.
No, it's always going to be a mini. Yeah, we're doing a little Trinity mini series, which I really should not do. My schedule between, obviously I'm doing a lot of TV Hollywood writing now.
Right.
And you just have gone through the 4,000 comics I'm writing.
I've gone through so many. Yeah.
I should not have taken on another series. But they said, hey, how about Trinity with Belen? And we can put all three girls in the same book. And I was like, I don't know. It just sounds so much fun. So yes. Yeah, there's going to be a Trinity mini series coming out. I don't know when we're going to tease it or when we're going to launch it, but I will fight for people to watch it. But it's very much in the style of the backups. It's silly and crazy. It does have a big continuity push in it. Like there's something that's going to really affect, DC stuff. So it's oddly important, but it's a book that's made for fun. It's made for you to be like, go to the store and take 5 minutes and laugh. It's not made to, and there'll be some tears in it, but because I can't write without tears, but mostly laughter.
Mostly laughter, of course.
Mostly laughter.
Yep. Now with Mr. Mirror and Mr. Miracle, that was like one of these, that and Vision are two of the books that really launched you out, off, and everything.
Yeah, Vision made my career. I always say.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
was the one.
Vision was just such an interesting, book. And where did that idea come from? Because that was just so unorthodox, out of the box thinking.
It was the idea was organic. The execution was desperation. The idea came from they offered me Vision. I was at the time not a very established writer. I was writing a book called Omega Men, which nobody was buying.
Someone mentioned that actually. Someone in the chat just mentioned that.
Oh, awesome! I have great love for that book, and Kyle
Oh yeah, I really like that too. Yeah.
Marvel. I was a Marvel zombie. Marvel reached out to me. Do you want to do a book? I said yes, of course, anything. I would love to write for Marvel. And they're like, we have a character for you. It's the Vision. And I was like, the Vision? Like of all the Marvel characters, like, no, I'm not. There's not a problem with him. He's just not like exciting. And he'd been off the board for 10 years. He'd been killed by Bendis. And David Finch, who I ended up working with later. But I was like, yeah, it's my favorite character. I lied through my teeth. I have a great idea. And they're like, what's your idea? And I was like, well, what do you want my idea to be? Just trying to suss them out, and they're like, how about something science fiction? So I was like, oh yeah, Vision's flying. And I was like, he's going to fly through space. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, he's going to be like Silver Surfer flying. And they're like, no, science fiction, but on Earth. And I was like, what the fuck is that? What is science fiction, but on Earth? And then I was sitting there being like, okay, science fiction but on Earth, like a Frankenstein thing. I'll do Bride of Frankenstein. That's a good movie. Like I told you, I steal from old movies.
Right.
Bride of Frankenstein. He builds a wife. I was like, well, I can't do that because that is Bride of Frankenstein. I was like, well, he builds a wife and 2 kids. I was like, okay, that's something. He builds a wife and 2 kids, and he has to go and live in the suburbs. I was like, that's a story. And so I was texting with my buddy Daryl, who's not a professional comic book, but just a super fan of comics. He's a friend of mine. And he's like, you have an idea for Vision? I was like, it's about Vision has a family and they move to the suburbs. And he's like, that sounds stupid. And then I was like, oh shit, he's right. It does sound stupid. And then I immediately just replied. I was like, but it's also Breaking Bad because that turns him evil. And he's like, now it sounds cool. And I was like, okay.
So basically sounds like the premise came cobbled together from just a bunch of circumstances. I've been there, trust me. That was
the organic origin of Vision. But then what became sort of the phenomenon of Vision was the idea that I wrote Vision the week Omega Men got canceled. It got uncanceled later. But it had just been canceled. Grayson was ending because of continuity stuff. And I was like, I had taken my shot at comics and I was losing. I was just not making it. And literally the week I wrote Vision, the Vision #1, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like I have nothing to lose. It was one of those very much moments. Like I'm just gonna write this and pretend I'm Neil Gaiman and write the best of it and just write a comic how I always wanted a comic to be and not sort of think about all the things that make me nervous and scared to write. And just write from my soul. And I wrote that and thinking nobody would read it and it would be as canceled as Omega Men. And it just goes to show, taking a risk can pay off. So that became a phenomenon that made my whole career. 6 issues later, I was offered the main title in Batman. So that's great.
Yep, that one. Yeah, and another person in the chat brings up Strange Adventures. He said Alana was so well written. Agreed, definitely.
Thank you. Oh, that means the world to me. She was great to write. Again, another very complex character, not all good and definitely not all bad. But someone who just was fighting tooth and nail for her family, like a lot of wives and mothers do.
Definitely.
To keep her family going in a very, very hard time. And then found out that all that fighting was... had the rug completely pulled underneath her, and that sort of elevated her to another level. Yeah. So Alana was absolutely wonderful. Someday Mitch and I are going to do an Alana Mr. Terrific book and team them up with Mitch has a good Terrific Adventures, I think is Mitch.
Nice. That sounds like a perfect follow-up to Strange Adventures.
Right? Doesn't that sound good? Terrific Adventures.
Yep. Now that's about SATA.
Right? Yeah. See, it works.
Yep. And with Mr. Miracle, I gotta say that twist still catches me off guard every time I read it. It's like, wait, so it's pretty much he's dead, and it's basically a case of he'd rather stay in this fantasy because it's pretty much the perfect life. How did that twist come about?
Yeah, Mr. Miracle has an ambiguous ending. It's a book where I gave you, I think, like 7 or 8 possibilities of what is happening. Either he's dead, either he's in hell, or he's in heaven, or dark side,
purgatory, or whatever.
Purgatory, dark side 1, or he's in the real world, or there's a ton of ways to look at it. There is an answer. I know the answer because I'm God in this universe. So one of them
You're the source.
One of them is correct. But the idea there was, and at the time, and I've talked about this a lot, but I was going through some mental health issues, some psychological issues. Obviously, with Mr. Miracle, I think you can read it.
Yeah.
And for people who have been through that and come to the other side, when you get to the point where you never feel whole again, but you feel like you've healed a little bit in the sense of like a wound healing over where you still see the scars. At that point, you feel that, okay, I got through something, but you don't, and if you got through it, you used 1,000 different techniques to get there. Okay, I relied on my friends. I bought a dog. I went into therapy. I took medication. Time just passed. The world got a little better. The world got a little. You don't know the exact answer of what healed you. You just know you're on the other side of the swamp. You can't see which bridge it was you crossed. But you know you're safe. You know you've gotten somewhere good. So that's the metaphor at the end. That's the idea.
I gotcha.
That sometimes when you heal, you don't know exactly what healed you, but still you have to go forward and live your life.
Well, last question I've got, because I know our time is limited, but with Batman, your Batman run, Selena was showing just how important she was to him. And Wonder Woman, you've been showing how Steve Trevor is important to her. So if you were to write Superman, what do you think you might do for Lois? Yeah, so you knew I was getting up to that. You had him.
Well, the thing about Lois and Superman is they've kind of they're at the end of their relationship. I feel like Batman and Catwoman were at the beginning. Steve and Wonder Woman are kind of in the middle of their relationship, and Lois and Superman are not the end, but they're at sort of
fully realized.
Fully realized this sort of that stage. So I mean, don't get me wrong. If I was to write Superman, there would be a ton of romance. There would be a ton of Clark, Lois making out, and I think they're a very vital couple. But I wouldn't do stuff like, I don't know, breaking up the marriage and making it all like that. She would be a huge part of it. I don't think it would necessarily be I don't know. That's not true. Like, again, my wife and I married for 20 years, and I feel like we're still living a romance story. So it would be the romance story of a married couple, which I think you don't see told too often in media. So that would be fun to play with, actually. Now I'm talking myself into it.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you for joining up with us.
Thank you. What fantastic questions, and it was wonderful talking to you. How did I do? Did I okay with the questions? All right.
Oh, yep, you did very good. I was able to get through just about so many of them. Yep, and just loved it so much. Cannot wait for Black Canary. Cannot wait for Trinity. Still loving Wonder Woman. Can't wait for Lanterns and all the other stuff you're doing in Hollywood.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the great work, and who knows, maybe I can get you on again in another year.
I hope so, man. It's a ton of fun talking to you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone else for joining in, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Have a good night, sir.
Take care.